Hello and welcome back to Rev Endurance Sports, and today we are going to do a progress report on this new bike rider who has found his local bike shop. Quite literally, he lives like half a mile away from the shop like I do, across the street in a different housing tract, but basically really close to where I live. In fact, one of the days that he came to pick up the bike, it was raining, and so I said, look, he didn't have a bike rack or anything, or any way to transport his bike. So I said, look, I'll just give you a ride home. We'll put the bike in my minivan, and I gave him a ride home, and it was the housing tract across the street from me. So he is now working with the local bike shop. Although he bought a bike rack, it looks really inexpensive, so I don't know. I believe this gentleman's on a budget, and I completely understand that. Times are hard. This is now April 10th of 2025. So he came in, I did a little bit of work on his bike, and I told him that aerobars were a non-negotiable if he was going to do a 70.3 event, so 56 miles on the bike. And he said, okay, I trust you, let's do it. So what we did was we purchased a value set of bars. So in other words, you could spend a lot of money on these bars, 200, 300, whatever. You can get them in a carbon setup, all that. But we just got him a $100 Aero bar setup that, by the way, is some assembly required. But you get, and by the way, I sent him a couple of images and I said, do you like this? Do you like that? And he opted for this one. This is called the Legacy 2 from Profile Design. Now, Profile Design has had a lot of stuff over the years, but really their thing is making aero bars. They have all the different price points, so you can scale up quite a bit. You can get these in carbon. I have carbon aero bars, which I'll show you in a minute. So we have the aero bar installation. It is the rest of the bike is functioning just fine. The derailleurs are shifting fine. The brakes are fine. But I do want to share a little story with you because, again, this is the value of the local bike shop. This gentleman, I believe he's doing all his riding alone. He just hasn't joined any clubs or any people to ride with. And if we look back to when this initial bike profile video was done, I don't know, it's been probably a month or two, I'm not sure, but the time frame is somewhat important. He told me that here's how it all started. We were talking about a basic flat repair, and we were talking about CO2 cartridges and how to use a CO2 inflator. And then, he's watching me as I'm loosening up the Presta valve, the valve to open the Presta valve so we can, it was a demo. I didn't actually use a CO2 canister, but I said, this is how you put it on. And I noticed he was like so intent to look over my shoulder. And I kind of thought that was a little odd. And I said, you know how to operate these valves? And he's like, well, I've actually not aired up my tires since I've had this bike. And I said, well, do you have a floor pump at home? And he said, yes. I said, oh, so you could air up your tires. And he said, like I said, it's probably been a month or two that he's had this bike, at least a month or two. He's never aired up. And then I said, well, okay. Here I go again as the local bike shop. You should air up every time you ride. You need to air up every time you ride, especially if multiple days go by in between one ride and the next ride. Because as you have, like, let's say, just to make the math really simple, if you have 100 psi in your tire, most of the time, the first day or so, you're going to lose 5 psi, right? And as that pressure starts to come down, maybe you start to lose 3 psi, and then 2 psi. And so by a week down the road, you may be down 10 psi. Now, I had to also say to him, the biggest conversation everyone has these days is tire construction and tire pressure. So we really need to focus in on this. And I'm going to call him John just to make it anonymous. And I said, John, this is probably the single most important thing you can do to improve your riding efficiency. You are riding pretty low-end tires. At least keep them inflated properly. And he's like, okay. So when I put the pump on, I laughed because he has such a great sense of humor that he was like, yeah, I can see that that's really a problem. He was down to like 40-something PSI. And one of the tires, I think, had like 47, and I forget what the other one had. But he was below 50. That's the point. And this is a tube setup. It's a 30 millimeter tire, tubed. So, he weighs about 170 pounds. He probably should have at least 60. So from 60 to 47, that's a pretty big spread. But he probably should have a lot more because it's tubed. So let's say maybe 70 PSI, and he had about 47. And one thing he said to me after we had this quick discussion, he said, I noticed the last time I got the bike serviced by you, I just felt like the bike was so fast. And I'm like, yeah, because I aired up your tires for you. So just a funny little story, but just this gentleman bought this bike online, and he's a marathoner. He really has no foundation for his, as a cycling experience, or as a cyclist, he has no foundation. So everything to this gentleman is new. He is now my special project. I'm taking a lot of pride in helping this gentleman out because he's going to improve in leaps and bounds because I'm going to cut that learning curve. But again, I did not know. And here's the thing. You forget how much, if you're an experienced cyclist, you forget how much you know and how much you do as muscle memory. For example, we all just air up our tires right before we ride. It's part of it's like putting our helmet on. It's like putting our cycling shoes on. It is just a muscle memory thing that we do. So he hasn't built that muscle memory because he didn't even know he had to do it. And as I said, as an experienced cyclist, you forget all the things that you just do. So if you can make a comment down below and say, yeah, there's this thing that I do that I had to explain to a riding mate that he or she never did it because they never thought they needed to do it. And that's the thing with this gentleman. He didn't know he had to air up his tires every ride. Right. So a couple other things that some folks ask, and I'm doing this only because people ask. I really, really dislike talking about weight on bikes because it is only a small portion of the overall bike rider system. You are a system. The bike does not go up the hill by itself. So this bike is 23 pounds dry weight. Dry weight means no bottles, no toolkit, nothing. This is just as you see it. Pedals, cages, that's it. 23 pounds for this bike. Whatever that is in kilograms, you folks can do the conversion. maybe someone can drop a comment down below of what that conversion is. Now, one other thing that I'm going to do to help him, like shortcut 25 years of issues that I had as an ultra cyclist, is I'm going to get him started using my Rev Energy carbohydrate product, because it is essential to fuel yourself. He is going to be doing a half Ironman, so I don't know, maybe 6 hours worth of effort. If someone can throw a comment down below of what is a mid-pack 70.3 time, so the swim, the bike, and the run. I mean, I'm guessing sub 5 is pretty good for an age grouper, and 6 hours is mid-pack. Someone can help me with that. I don't do triathlons, nor do I follow it, so it's never been an interest of mine. But I'm going to shortcut his learning curve on nutrition and how to fuel properly by having him use the Rev Energy product. So if you have stuck around to the end of this video, I want to give you a little treat, so stick around for that. I mentioned earlier that I have profile design aerobars, and these are very basic, but they're very light because they're just very basic. And this was during the time frame when I had 13-pound bikes. So anything that I added to the bike should not have increased the weight dramatically. So these are very simple. Just put those on, and I take them on and off based on the type of event. And then this is another bar that I use, and I like this bar because it bolts onto the stem. Now this had a proprietary stem with these 4 flats on it, so that when you put the stem on and this aero bar together, you weren't clamping your bars to the handlebar like these or like those over there. You would clamp it to the stem. But it's still a very good setup for me because I put these on my stems, and it doesn't matter what type of handlebar I have because it'll be just fine. So, as I mentioned, I wanted to give you folks a treat. So if you would like to try Rev Energy, which is a complex carbohydrate product with no flavor, no electrolytes, no protein, no fat, no BCAAs. It is just complex carbs. Also, no fructose. I specifically did not want any fructose in it. Then send an email to revcycling@gmail.com. And this is only for first-time buyers. Introductory offer for first-time buyers. 20% off your order of Rev Energy complex carbohydrate drink. All right, for everyone else, thank you so much for tuning in. Please like and subscribe. Over 76% of you watching these videos are not subscribed. Please subscribe. Doesn't cost you anything. Thank you so much, and we will see you up the road.